Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to one more session on the Maya Bifrost today. Once again, as I always and on all my webinars, ask all of you guys. I hope you all are safe and at home, working from home, learning from home, spending more time with family. And I know it's still extended for a couple of more days, but then it's eventually for our safety. So let's all do it together. So thank you everyone, and welcome once again on behalf of Autodesk. I would like to welcome you all for today's webinar. I'm Samit Shetty, Technical Solution Manager with India, and I've been doing series of webinars in the past 1 month. This was supposed to be my last, but then because a lot of you guys are attending and you guys have the time, so we thought that let's do this webinar just call me if you feel this. All right, that was a short video on Bifrost, and these are the people who have contributed their work and the test files with us to showcase what all can you do along with Bifrost. So moving ahead, what's Bifrost and when did it release? For people who are existing Maya users know that Bifrost used to be a plugin within Maya for a long time now. But then we rewrote the entire plugin once again, and we released it 6 months back when with Maya 2019.2, which got released. So anyone who is using Maya 2018 and later can use this plugin. So with Maya 2019.2 onwards, it comes as by default plugin embedded inside the tool. But in case if somebody is using at least 2018, not before that, 2018 and ahead, they can download the plugin from the area.autodesk.com/bifrost/downloads and install that plugin in their Maya, and they can start using it. So it's absolutely easy, and even people who are using the older versions due to constraints with projects and client requirements and all can use Bifrost very easily. For people who are using Arnold, for them, the recommended build of Arnold would be at least 3.2.2 and further, because beyond that, the entire infrastructure and architecture of Arnold is totally different, which might not give you the proper output of with the Bifrost. Bifrost is going to be a bridge which will be used between 3ds Max and Maya both. So the good news is we might come up with a Bifrost for 3ds Max as well. And the whole idea because of Bifrost is it's a procedural tool, it's a node based tool. So you can export your compounds, okay, very easily and put it inside Max or Maya or vice versa. Like if you create something in Maya, you can export it to Max. You create something in Max, you can export it in Maya very easily. And that's the whole idea we are working towards in the future. And it's still in beta in 3ds Max. But in case if you want to try it out, the bottom link which you can see, the feedback.autodesk.com/keys 3ds Max beta applications, you can enroll yourself for the 3ds Max beta along with the Bifrost for 3ds Max. What is Bifrost? Basically everything is points and topology doesn't really matter, so you can work very easily with any kind of mesh data information you want. Okay, deform, stand, CVs, everything. And it is powerful, it is scalable, procedural geometry generation, which means everything is in front of you. It's not behind the hood, it's in front of you. It's like node based, and you can just change the order and you're ready to go. So there are a couple of things which you can use it directly from the Bifrost browser. So you also have a browser where the content is readily available. You don't have to, if you don't want to start something from scratch, you can directly access from the content browser and use it and also share with your community. So the whole idea about Bifrost is designed around the MPM format, which is the MPM theory, which is the material point methods, which we call it as. It was earlier created for mechanics and science by scientists, but then it became a very popular tool among computer graphics also because of its point grid technology. These are a couple of examples which you can see that when you play around with the parameters, when you play around with the nodes, you can achieve some results based on your requirement, which is extremely soft particles, less harder particle, intense frictions, and more initial firmness, and so on. So everything can be tweaked there and there itself because it's procedural. And also, if you want to create some effects like snow particles and all, you can do it very easily. I'm not going to get into detail on how do we do it because this is a procedural example of how you create a snowball, which is also readily available in the content browser of Bifrost. So these are the places, these are the compounds which has been used to create a snow effect. Now, if you see, the ball is nothing but a standard sphere which got deformed into a shape like that, and which then started emitting particles and became a mountain, and all of them starts creating small, tiny, minute particles. And that's the whole idea behind this. And if you can see this, the whole 3D mesh has now become a ball of particles which starts looking like a ball of snow. And then you get an effect like this when I just play, and you can see you create something which was again created inside Bifrost. And this was a test shot. This is not a final render or a final thing. You have a lot of tweakings to do, but this is very easily something which can be created. Now, the whole idea beyond me showing this presentation is that when it comes to Bifrost, the first thing that comes in mind is particles and fire and snow. Not really, because the first thing everyone thinks is it's meant for effects. That means I can create particles, I can create liquids, and I can create fumes or clouds and snow and so on. Not really, but it's also very handy for creating stuffs like this, okay, where you can see this cable car and the chains. I'm just going to go back and forth to show you that the effects of the chain and the effects of the mesh was completely created inside Bifrost. And I assume this is a video which I'm going to play. Such kind of effects, not necessary these are smoke, these are fire, these are this can be an effect which can be used for visual effects for films, or ad commercials and all, can be very easily achieved inside Bifrost. Now, I'm not going to get into depth, but I'm just going to explain you on how Bifrost works and what are the other things which can be created inside Bifrost. I'm assuming a lot of people here in this webinar are new to Bifrost, so I'm just going to take you a quick tour of Bifrost. Like for example, when you go to Windows, you have two things with you. One is the Bifrost browser. I'm going to talk about that later, but I'm just going to open that and show you that you have some couple of default setups which has been created based on fire, based on cloth, smoke, particles, volumes, and sand and snow. All these are ready templates. You don't have to create something from scratch. All you have to do is just import them and start modifying them depending on your requirement. Now, how do you modify is something which you'll only come to know when you are aware of the entire procedural procedural workflow. So what we have is something called as Bifrost editor. This is something which is very handy. This is a new editor which comes along with the Bifrost. In case if you're not able to find the Bifrost editor and the Bifrost graph editor, all you need to do is go to Windows and plugin manager, and maybe just type Bifrost, sorry, Bifrost, and you just need to tick on to all these plugins. The plugins will be installed or maybe active inside Maya, and then you're going to see this Bifrost graph editor popping out into your Windows menu. So first of all, I can just say create a graph which is empty, and you can see there is two things in the graph. One is an input and one is an output. Now input is something which I don't want because I'm going to add an input to it. So let me just delete this input and minimize the graph for now. And let's say I have a sphere and I want the sphere to emit particles. So all I want to do is in my outliner, I can drag the sphere and this sphere is going to be the input. And that's the reason I deleted that input node from the graph editor earlier. Now, if I connect this input sphere to an output, nothing is going to happen because there is nothing happening in between. Correct. So all we need to do is that we need to make sure Yeah, it's, I think now it's fine, right? You can hear me. Yeah, so. Extremely sorry, guys. This computer got frozen, and then the audio connection was lost, and I think I'm back now. So all I did was imported the sphere from the outliner, and when I press tab, you can see I have the all nodes tab where all these options are available. These are all procedural nodes which I can use one by one to do where, whatever things I want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say basic particle graph. Okay, so when I say basic particle graph, what I get is a particle graph like this, and you can see when I zoom in, you see all these small tiny particles icon shows that these will generate particles. Now there is no input and output for it like this. Okay, it has, but then it has more number of options inside. So what I can do is right click and say explode. When it explodes, you can see I have a whole lot of setups. Like this one will generate particles. This is the particle source. This one will help you collide with any objects if you want, and this one will have its own settings for solvers. So all these three together will form a particle. What I'm going to do is connect this source, because this is the thing which is going to emit particles, and that will connect to the geometry, and the output of this will be connected to the output final ones. Okay, now when I minimize this and just play it, you can see that I have a very good looking particles which are being emitted by this object. It's just very easy and handy, right? And if you want to toggle and you want to play around with the particle size, you can just say that I want the speed of the particles to be less. You want the bounciness to, okay, obviously we haven't made it bounce. The rate of the particle can be reduced to 50 or whatever. Now all these nodes, okay, have some of the other settings next to it, and if you're not aware of these settings, you can go to the info tab here. And when you go to the info tab, it will tell you that what will this node do and what will the individual parameters in that node will behave like. So you can just read and understand the objective of these individual nodes. So that's what it's all about. Now if I want these particles to bounce and interact with this object, the small tiny particles with this object, I can just create an object in between, and maybe just put it there. Now what I can do is open the graph editor once again and pull the cube inside. Now this cube, we all know that this cube is going to be a collider, so simply move this into the collide geometry and minimize this. And when I play back, sorry, and when I play back, you can see it just hits the objects, and you have a very nice particle being generated by one object and being collided by another object. So this way you can have multiple objects to collide with each other, or it can be your model, it can be anything you want to. So the whole idea was to talk about is the procedural workflow of Bifrost. And if you like the compound, so this is a compound, you can just group them and make a compound so that you can export this to another system, or share it with another artist who can use it with their in their team. So it's as easy as that. If you want to double click that, it opens and gives you the entire workflow back, so that if you want to mix and match, change the object, change the particle generation, you can do it very easily. So that's the whole idea about the whole this thing. Now it's not only particles, but if you want to generate smoke, fire, dust, or something like that very quickly, I'm not going to get into depth because there are tons of videos based on that. I'm just going to say that I want this object to create smoke, and I'm just going to animate that so that it moves, okay, like a rocket. And to create particles behind its trail, I'm just going to import this particle thing, the sphere, and press tab, and you can say basic aerograph. And aerograph is something which will emit smoke. Okay, so I'm just going to explode this. Very easy, we all know how it works. And I'm just going to create the mesh to this, and let me connect this and check how it works. Okay, it just freezes for a second, but when you play, you can see there is a tiny amount of particle connected behind this ball. Okay, now this is very tiny and it's not much visible. So what I can do is go to the air source and maybe increase the fog density to 5, and maybe the fog density has to be maximum. Okay, and let's now go back and play, and you can see the ball, the same fireball, has started emitting thick smoke. Okay, now this really doesn't look like smoke because it does not have its individual particles being spread across. This looks like a very is a very soft looking tube. So in order to have individual smoke flakes moving in different directions, you can add any damn thing between it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an influencer, because you can see there is a setting for this in the aero simulation. There is something called as influencer. So let's say I want to have influence. Where is it got in? FLU. Okay, I can have a basic influencer, or 1 second. So let me just write Vorticity Vorticity Influence. Okay, so this influence, Vorticity Influence will kind of make the smoke flakes spread among each other, and does not behave like a ball or a smooth uh, tube kind of an effect. So if you see, when it goes further, there is an amount of individual smoke flakes being spread across each other, and this gives you a kind of a realistic feel effect, which is much more different than what it used to be when we didn't apply the vorticity influencer. So there are tons of things which you can do. I'm not going to get into depth. Okay, so coming back to the presentation part, things like smoke, flame, flak, and all that stuff can be created. Now let me come back to another tool, which is okay, coming back to an example like this, which is an ad commercial which was created for no smoking on something which is a product which is used to quit smoking. So Citex basically is a product which they used a turkey, a CG turkey, and the fur, okay, was completely created using Bifrost. So I'm going to play this video first. This is the final product, and I'm going to show you a short breakdown of how it was done.
It's tough to quit smoking cold turkey, so Chantix can help you quit slow turkey. Along with support, Chantix is proven to help you quit. With Chantix, you can keep smoking at first and ease into quitting. So when the day arrives, you'll be more ready to kiss cigarettes goodbye. When you try to quit smoking with or without Chantix, you may have nicotine withdrawal symptoms. Stop Chantix and get help right away if you have changes in behavior or thinking, aggression, hostility, depressed mood.
If you focus on the fur, the wings and everything, the softness and the effect is basically done using Bifrost.
Tell your doctor if you've had mental health problems. The most common side effect is nausea. Talk to your doctor about Chantix.
So it's not just that it can be only used for smoke particles and snow particles and all. This is the short breakdown of this. So the build user effects feather, okay, the cloth body feather mask is basically everything done using Bifrost. They were actually polygons which were stuck to the object like feathers, and then given that jaggedness and the softness, like that rubbery feeling to it, and it also interacts with each other. So in case it properly behaves like a real feather which an animal can have. So this is basically the entire graph of the object. I'm going to talk about how, not exactly how this was done, but basically what are the things which was used as a object, as a body, and as a collider. For example, this is the body which will have the feather effect, and it has to collide with the box so that the box becomes like a collider. So I'm just going to, switch it to this. You can see the objects colliding with the boxes now. And yeah, so you can use the geometry as a collision object. And it will behave well with the objects, and anything that's penetrating inside will be taken care of. So including her, the jackets and everything which was done. I'm just going to see whether this is the one which I was talking about, or it's for the. Okay, let me just show you another example of the jacket, how it was done. So the same body, okay, you have one output of the body, which will have a small tiny particle of like a cloth knitting itself. Okay, it's not been actually modeled this way, but it's basically replica of one small spear or a torus knot, or a torus which has been replicated in the form of the mesh. Okay, so nobody has actually went and sat and created this jacket, but it was all done using procedural node based tool. Okay, so based on the body's topography, the jacket was created, the sweater was created, and all you need to do then is to apply to the output geometry. So I'm just going to, yeah, this is the one, and you can see individual objects has a small little fur. Okay, because your blankets or your sweaters will have those kind of tiny little hair to make you feel warm. How was that done? Is basically you can take any simple object, like for example, let's take in this case there was a torus knot, a small torus which was taken, uh, imported inside as the input, and you can apply something like make fuzz, which will automatically create hair strands to it. Okay, you can just modify the shape of the object. It duplicates the hair strands in that area also. And then what you can do is apply a material. Okay, apply a material is very easy. All you need to do is go to the Arnold shader, and you can say apply a hair shader. Okay, when you apply a hair shader and change the color of the hair depending on your requirement, and when you apply a light and render it, you can see how easily and how quickly have you created. Obviously you can increase the density of the hair because it shouldn't look very less, and when you go close and see inside, it actually gives you a feeling of a kind of a jacket which has fur on it, right? So it's very easy to create something very quickly. And this is basically all depending on this graph which is behind the hood. You don't have to worry about the make fuzz node has all these in details which can go inside and individually tweak, or else just live with something which looks like that. So very handy stuff to actually work with. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of what else can you create with Bifrost, not just smoke, fire, and flame. Some more examples is I'm just going to open one more scene file, that is a cloth. Okay, what have I done is basically this is a piece of uh, a plane. Okay, and I have two separate boxes which is not actually connected, but I've just intersected them, and there is a small animation going on. What I want is this plane has to behave like spring or elastic, and which has to be constrained to this two object. Okay, so what I can do, go to a new Bifrost graph. I'm just going to delete this and import the cloth one. Okay, and also import constraint 1 and constraint 2 to this graph. Okay, now I want this cloth to behave like an MPM cloth. Okay, so I press tab and say create where is it gone? Okay, better I'll just say MPM, and it will say make MPM cloth. Okay, sorry, not create but make MPM cloth. So the cloth, this object will become a MPM cloth. Now what I want is the MPM cloth also to have its own constraint. So MPM cloth, MPM constrain MPM. So when I say constrain MPM, this cloth will be fed into the constrain MPM object, and this will also have constraint geometries, because I want these geometries to connect to this cloth, to hold the cloth like 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 an object which is being stitched to, like a cloth which has been stitched to an object. Now after that I want the cloth to simulate, right? So I can also say MPM. So there is simulate MPM, which I can just go inside and connect this to the source, and the output of this cloth mesh will go to this output. All right, now every time I'm doing this, it's basically calculating in the background. So I don't want the evaluation to happen in the background when I'm doing. So I'm just going to pause the evaluation, because then it becomes much more easier for me. Okay, now I want the settings to also have to be there. So I'm just going to say MPM settings maybe, or sorry, simulation simu. Okay, I'm just going to say settings. MPM solver settings, yes, that should be a good thing. Okay, and I'm just going to put that in the setting node. Now once everything is done, I'm just going to say resume the the background task, and here I have a cloth, and you can see there is another Bifrost object which is there in the cloth. So this object I'm just going to hide it for time being, and let's say I don't want the grid to be visible, and when I play this, you can see the plane now behaves like an elastic cloth, right? And it starts moving in, it starts interacting with that, with the two piece of boxes which I have. Okay, let me just make the boxes much more animated, and also move it far away so that they actually start stretching with the object, and take it behind. Yeah, so I'm just going to go back and play it again, and they actually start stretching the cloth further, so that there is the elasticity which we can see. Now I don't want too much of elasticity, so I'm just going to go back and say MPM cloth, the vibration is 20. I'm just going to make the vibration 50, so that it actually does not have too much of elasticity. I'm just going to go back and process this once again. So now you can see that the bounciness or that stretch has reduced far more than what it used to be. Okay, now not only that, it's still getting stretched and stretched, but in real world, if you notice that every object has some kind of tension to it. Like if you pull it beyond its tension, it will definitely break. So what I can do is, let me go back to this and see, there is something called as failure. Okay, now what I can do is this failure, it says no failure, I'm going to say subdivide the failure to split. Okay, so it's going to split the object when pulled in a much wider area. So I'm just going to switch this off right now, and let me just play it. And now because of that stretch, the cloth is actually going to tear off, and I hope it tears off. Yes, and you can see the tear has happened, and it will now start behaving like a real piece of cloth depending on the tension, right? So that's something which you can do. Now here, if you see on this area, the cloth is actually penetrating inside the cube. Okay, now that should not be a real case, because the cloth should actually bounce or collide with the cube, but in other words, in return, it is actually going inside the box, inside the cube, which should not be the right thing, right? So what I'm going to do is, just as what we said, these constraints are actually not colliding. So I'm just going to say add a collider, collider, collider. Okay, this collider, okay, let me just pause this evaluation because it will be much more easier. The collider will go here, and what will be the collider is these two geometries. These two geometries are going to collide. So I'm just going to say resume the evaluation and go back and play it. And now when the cloth is getting stretched, it will tear off for sure, and the piece of cloth which is spent, which remains, will actually hit the boxes and bounce back. Yes, it's tearing now, and the small piece which remains will not actually pass through the geometry, but it will actually hit the object and bounce, so that it behaves like a real piece of cloth. So earlier, if you remember, this object used to, this piece used to go in, but now it actually gets the constraint and it does not pass through it. So that's one thing which you can very easily try it out. And to generate a piece of cloth which actually interacts with a human being or a piece of curtain, for example. Let me give you another example of this object which you can paint. You can paint the vertices, and that vertices will actually have constraints with the geometry. For example, what I've done is I have two planes and two rings which are not animated now. So what I'm going to do is, let's say this, I'm going to animate it till say about 50 frames, and this is going to move here, a little bit of rotation to give it more realistic effect. Okay, and this one also if you want, or I'm just going to not do anything to it. Okay, so this is what it is. Now what I want is this piece of cloth should be hanging on this ring as if it's stitched inside. So what we can do is, before we apply a graph to it, what I can do is right click on this plane and let's paint the vertices. So I'm going to say color set, say use color set editor, and here I'm going to say new, and in the new I'm going to say paint to alpha, that's the A component, and say apply and close, and color paint vertices tool, and I'm going to paint in this area where I feel that it has to interact, right? And say update. The same thing I'm going to do it for this object too. Sorry, for the other object I'm just going to go to color set new, okay, alpha, fine, paint, and I'm going to paint this. Okay, I doubt there's something. Anyways, let's see. Okay, so it's done. Okay, now what I'm going to do is create the graph. We all know how to create this graph. First of all, let me get in both the planes which are going to behave like a cloth, a piece of cloth. Okay, and also I want these two toruses which will behave like a constraint, right? So what I've done before, I'm going to repeat the same thing. So I'm going to say make npm cloth, that is going to be both of these two geometries. What I did again was constraint, npm constraint, and this is going to be this, and this constraint geometries, this torus 1, torus 2, and what was else is the simulate npm going inside this, the cloth mesh, bringing it out. Okay, and once this is done, I hope everything is in place. When I play this, okay, let me just see if the plane has to be hidden. Yes, both the planes I will hide because there is a new BIF thing which has been created. And when I just play this, something went wrong. Oops. Okay, I forgot to put the settings, the npm solver settings. Yes, of course. Without this, nothing will happen. So I'm just going to put the settings to this, and I hope okay, this evaluation is happening in the background, and of course now, There's something which I missed, I guess. Okay, either I make it once again or maybe just check what's going wrong. This is there. Okay, there was some issues with the paint stuff, but I'm going to try if I have a file which has already been made. I'm not very sure with this. Okay, let me just hide it and create this once again, this last one shot, and if it works fine, or else uh, I'm going to share you some tutorials on how do you do it. I'm just going to go inside color set and new alpha paint, and I'm just going to paint it here. Okay, update, and the plane will come inside. The torus will also be here. Make MPM cloth. This cloth will go inside the geometry, and then I'll have MPM constraints. This will go MPM source, and this will go inside the constraint geometry. And MPM simulate. I don't know whether I used this in the previous thing which I did, but anyways, let's say this, assuming this is that, and tab, I want this MPM solver settings. Yeah, so I go for this, and I hope it works. Let me just give it a try. I don't want this plane. Let me just see if I can hide this. Oh, there's something which went wrong, and I'm not very sure what did I do wrong. Anyways, not, I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, working on this. Let me just say no failures. Yes, there is no failures. Everything looks intact to me. So let me just not spend more time on this. I'll just check it once. If there are videos on this online. If you want to check on paint vertices, or maybe just create a curtain along with with the help of Bifrost, you can do that very easily. So I'm just going to not spend more time on this. So I'm going to move back to my presentation part. Now there are a couple of examples which has been shown here, which in which Bifrost has been used. These are live examples of Bifrost which can be used for various purposes. There is one more which was actually used for an ad commercial of a car. This is where basically they wanted to show a lot of smoke and the car coming out of smoke, and this is how it was created. Then you can see the effect of the smoke and the dust, and also the force of the car moving the smoke and dust in an opposite direction. So these are few things which can be very easily created using the Bifrost for Maya, which is now available as a part of the Maya software. I know a lot of people in the last session had asked, can we use VDB files inside Bifrost? Yes, you can. There are possibilities. Now VDB, for people who don't know what are VDBs, they are like, there are multiple ways, multiple names for VDB files, but they are basically open files which are available. It's basically like an image, but 3D files. They are also called as voxel database or volumetric data blocks, etc., etc. You can download VDB files from the net, which is free of cost. I downloaded something from QBrush, and if you go to QBrush, I think I have the QBrush site open with me. Yes, so I can just go and say VDB clouds, and it will give me lots of options for clouds which I can either download. Of course, there is a cost involved to it if you want to use it for commercial purpose, but then there are some which are free, like for example this one I used it for free, and once you sign in, and then you can download them. Make sure you don't use it for commercial purpose. If you want to use it for commercial purpose, there is a price to it which you can pay and download and use it. But thanks to QBrush, which I downloaded a lot of VDB files for clouds. That's something which is the last part of the presentations. Hence, I'm just showing you the path where I have saved the VDB files. So I'm just going to go inside and oops, where is the Bifrost, and there is OpenVDB clouds. So there are lots of them. I'm just going to go round clouds, high resolution. Okay, let me just show you the render files. How do they look? Okay, so they look like this. Okay, they are like puffy clouds, different kinds of. Okay, so there are about more than 200 clouds which I downloaded. Okay, and I can use it very easily. So these are JPEG images. I'm going to go to the high res, and you can see round clouds .vdb. So I'm just going to select any one and copy that name, okay, and go inside Maya. Now let me just say new scene, and I have a graph editor. I'm just going to say delete this, and I'm going to import. I'm just going to say VDB. Okay, when I say VDB, there is a lot of options which you get, like read open VDB files, read open VDB volumes, and so on. So I'm just going to say read open VDB volumes. This is what I get. Now this is the file name. I'm going to paste that file name here. Okay. Now it also asks for the path, so I'm just going to copy the path here and paste it here. I can also say frame number 150015 or whatever. I'm just going to keep it simple now. And you can see this is my viewport. There's nothing here right now. And when I connect this to the output, I should be getting a small ball of cloud here. And this is a very cool looking 3D cloud. Okay, I don't want to do anything. What I want to do is simply say go to Arnold, lights, use a physical light, a physical sky, and maybe just render it. And you can see the details which you get on the viewport as well. So that's the beauty of the viewport 2.0. Now that you don't have to actually render a single file to see the details of the file of a 3D object of a 3D file which you have added lights to, or it can be volumetric stuff, or it can be Bifrost. It is as close to the viewport which you can see. So for basic stuff, you don't have to hit the render button, which eventually is going to take a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes to load. And this is the most easiest way you can do, is just have a look at the viewport viewport itself directly. So if you want, you can just say I don't want the grid, and this actually behaves like a real cloud for you. And if you are convinced, you can just go ahead and hit the render button. So VDB files can be imported directly. That's not a problem at all. One last thing which I want to talk about is the the Bifrost browser. You can choose any of these if you want to. Like for example, all you need to do is select and import. If you, want to select a blast or an explosion, whatever, I'm just keeping it simple. It gives you a complete graph. Okay, and I'm just going to minimize this, and I hope this works. Yep, there's an input which is already connected to it, so all I need to do is say play, and you can see this is far more realistic or closer to the final renders which you can get or achieve when you actually hit the render button. So what I'm going to do is not I'm just going to go Windows, setting and preference, let's say color settings. The background, I'm just going to make it black, and I'm just going to say switch off the grid and hit the render button. You can see the render output and the viewport output is almost the same. I'm like, it's 70% closer to the render output. Now if I want to take decisions, I can do it on the viewport itself. I don't have to go back to the render button, hit the render button, and then wait for the render to happen. So this is the beauty of your viewport output as well. You save a lot of time, and you can see there is hardly any difference in the final output and the viewport output, which means you can decide, you can take a call by not actually hitting the render button in the initial stages and just do or decide looking at the viewport itself. So that's something which has been also enhanced in the latest version of Maya, and that's all to do with the viewport. So yes, a lot of people have asked that, will it be an additional cost to us? No, it's not an additional cost, because Bifrost is default embedded inside Maya for now, and 3ds Max in the coming versions which releases, which will we have. If you are, and it's been shipped with 3ds with Maya 2019.1. But if you're using a version before 3ds, before Maya 2019.1, you can install the plugin and use it, which works from Maya 2018 and later. So, and also for your simulation, because the files can get heavier, right? So you can't just do all the simulation on one single machine. So you can split the simulation on various other machines, like how you do background rendering, and you use Arnold. The simulation can be done using engines, and with a collection, with an industry collection of M&E, you get 15 Bifrost engines, to simulate it on different machines. So with just one license of Maya, you get say about 3 engines, and with the collection, you would get 15 engines, which you can utilize it to simulate all your particles, or whatever it is, on different machines. You can split that. So with that, I would like to open it up for Q&A. Now let me just check where my yep, this thing is gone. All right, so any questions you guys have, please post it on the box below. There are some questions which I am going to read it out, and meanwhile, when I'm asking questions, there are some poll questions which will pop up on your windows. Please request you to answer those questions and stand a chance to win some exciting goodies from Autodesk. So yep, I'm just going to read out the questions, and meanwhile, please do answer the poll questions which will pop up in your window. So let me just first, okay, yeah, no, can't answer. Okay, let me just read the questions. Are those default plugins? Kaushik is asking me the yes, everything what I showed except the VDB file, everything is default embedded inside Maya. Okay, the VDB file can be just downloaded from the internet, from the web. There are lots of portals. You can just search for free VDB files, and a couple of them have some restrictions if you're using it for commercial purpose, but for test purpose, it's absolutely free. So Ishtiaq Sheikh, you are asking how can you download the previous webinars? I think you will be getting a video link of the recorded webinars, all of them together or one by one. I'll check with Avinash. He's handling the entire thing. And you should get the recordings very soon. So Arun is asking me, is that Turkey Bird ad is available for download? Arun, the ad video is available on YouTube. You can just search for the ad commercial. I will just tell you the name of the product. I keep forgetting that name. It's called as Cantex, I hope. Just checking. Yeah, it's called as Cantex, Cantix. So even if you search for Cantex ad commercial with Turkey, you will find it, but not the files, for sure. Yes, Akshay, you will get the webinars videos. Time to buy is the time we buy plugin. Is there any limited plugin depending on the software? The time we buy plugin, Kaushik, I'm not understanding. So Kaushik, I didn't understand your question much. So if you can just write me in detail, I can better guide you. So Preetham is asking, Bifrost can be used with other renders. Of course, if you're using some other competitive renders, not Arnold, it really doesn't matter. It can render using any render. So Kaushik, do you mean a limited period for the plugin? If you're asking that is there any limited period time frame to use that plugin? No, it's absolutely free within Maya, and people who are using Maya lesser previous version than 2019.1, they can also download and use it permanently. It will be a part of that product. It's compatible. So the whole idea was we released it with the version of 2019, but we also want people till 2018 use this product, to use this plugin, and it's compatible very well. So you can just download and use it for an unlimited time per frame. Sure, Akshay, you will get it. Thanks, Kaushik, for your question. Any more questions, please feel free to ask. And I hope you guys do try this. And there are tons of videos available on the web related to Bifrost. Okay, I'm just checking. There are some. You can go to the area.com where you can access videos on how to use Bifrost and to create smoke, flame, fire, etc., etc. There are some basic this thing. So http://area.autos.com/Bifrost. You will find tons and tons of resources. Arun is asking me future version of Max means. Okay, future version of 3ds Max. If you are a 3ds Max user, I'm sure there are a lot of 3ds Max user, and they are feeling very jealous of the Maya guys because Bifrost currently is only available in Maya. Now we are working towards it that the same thing which I showed will also be available in the next couple of versions. So I'm not promising which version of 3ds Max, but very soon we will be releasing the same Bifrost in 3ds Max as well. So Vikrant, there are tons and tons of resources. This is one officially by Autodesk. You can just there is one Yellow Dog website which also has Bifrost tutorials. You can just search for Bifrost for Maya tutorials and you'll find them in plenty. Thanks, Vikrant. All right, I think two more poll questions to go, and thanks a lot, guys, for your response. And do write to us in case if you have any suggestions in terms of tools or softwares which you want to see. I have another webinar which will be, Kaushik, this is specifically for you because you have been asking this for a long time now. I'm doing 3ds Max 2021 on the 16th of this month, that is coming Thursday, and it's going to be on the same time, 11 o'clock. And trust me, it's going to be a fantastic presentation, because there are some things which are very cool in 3ds Max which I want to address it to. Yes, thanks Nishan, thanks Kaushik, thanks Ishtiaq, thank you so much for this beautiful comments. Cool, perfect. Yes, guys. So thank you so much. We have almost all the poll questions been answered. Once again, do try Bifrost for Maya. There are tons of resources available, and examples as well. And be home, keep safe, and I'm sure this is the time you utilize for learning purpose, and that's the reason we are doing a lot of sessions for you guys, so that you guys learn a lot about the product and utilize it when the lockdown is all over. With that, I think I would like to finish this presentation today. And once again, I would thank all of you guys who have been, attending this webinar, and also, a couple of you guys I've been seeing you for on all my webinars. Special thanks to you too. So, all right, take care, be home, and be safe.